Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
The arrest of Elon Musk's grandfather. We'll tell you about it tonight. It'll be our feature conversation later in the program. Also related to the whole discussion around technocracy that we've been touching on for about 2 weeks now. Plus, tonight, we'll get into some of the highlights from Donald Trump's meeting with all the tech CEOs. Speaking of technology, Canada taps the brakes on the EV mandate, as announced today by the Prime Minister. And what else do we have going on for you? Oh, yeah, Trump renames the Department of Defense the Department of War. And we have Maverick Midnight Matinee on tap for you this evening as well. A feature presentation related to everything we're talking about tonight. Technocracy, technology, Trump, artificial intelligence, robotics. Tonight's feature episode, Little Lost Robot, a teleplay from 1962, an old, pretty much almost completely lost television series. As part of that, Little Lost Robot, a teleplay, a story adapted to a teleplay by Isaac Asimov. So stay with us. We've got a really stacked show for you tonight, informative and educational. I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms.
Just do it over here then. And I'm back. Okay, now we have the camera back. I do apologize for going black like that. It just cut out the camera, but the camera's back. So, first up tonight, because everything tonight is one way or another related to technology, but we're also talking about the economy, carving up the world into spheres of dominance, political ideology, and why the old labels of like fascism, communism, capitalism, these things are really becoming obsolete. Well, first up tonight, Mark Carney, Prime Minister, acknowledging that the entire world is undergoing a massive transformation, disruptive. And today, as a result of Donald Trump's tariffs, the huge shift that we're seeing geopolitically, especially in terms of economics, he announced that the Canadian government is going to be pausing the EV mandate. Carney also saying that Canada needs to, of course, pivot more to Europe and start trading more abroad, reducing dependence, of course, on the United States. Part of that, he says, will include creating new jobs by using defense spending and procurement programs domestically in Canada to stimulate the creation of employment. Here he is announcing the rollback on the EV, the electric vehicle mandate, which Canada has invested heavily in. Canada did that largely because of the United States and the Biden administration pushing so hard to push forward with the electrification of the auto industry.
Et gardez le cap sur 3 objectifs clairs.
Need to change the speed. One moment. Here we go.
Protéger nos communautés, sécuriser nos frontières et réduire le coût de la vie. The world is changing rapidly. The largest economy, the United States, is fundamentally reshaping all of its trading relationships. And we're moving from an age that lasted decades, an age when free trade was a motor of global economic growth, to a new age, an age of economic nationalism and mercantilism. You know, the U.S. tariff rate is now the highest it has been since the Great Depression in the 1930s. And these tariffs are being applied to all countries on nearly all goods. And the changes in U.S. policy go beyond tariffs. Countries now must, in effect, buy access to the world's largest economy through investments, through unilateral trade liberalization, and policy changes in their home markets. And all the while, the transformation of global trade is occurring against a backdrop of wider economic disruptions, of geopolitical realignment, of AI and other technological transformations, and the necessity, the imperative of a shift to a greener economy. What's going on is not a transition, it's a rupture, and its effect will be profound. Workers displaced from their jobs, supply chains that have existed for decades disrupted, companies forced to change where they find their materials and their products. And all of this is causing an extreme uncertainty that's holding back massive amounts of investment and, as a consequence, slowing economic growth. Just this morning, we see the impact in today's employment report in Canada, with unemployment rising across regions and sectors. This makes decisive action crucial. To be clear, we're in a position right now where Canada currently has the best trading deal with the United States of any of their trading partners. 85% of our trade with the U.S. is now tariff-free. We have the lowest tariff rate of any country in the world. But we also know that given all those changes, given the rupture, we can't rely on our most important trading partner as we once did. Le libre-échange depuis longtemps est un pilier de l'économie canadienne.
So I said a long time ago that I didn't think the EV mandates would really hold. I was skeptical because of market conditions, but I have to say I didn't see the tariff war coming to this degree, and I didn't see the impact that that would have on Canada to the degree that we're now seeing Carney respond this way. But really, it's the only thing that the Canadian government can do at this point, because the tariffs and the rollback on the U.S. side on the electrification of the auto industry dictates that Canada really needs to follow suit anyway, especially now that the auto industry is in such jeopardy. So he's making, in my view, the right move. It's the only move. It's the only thing he can do. And it should be pleasing people on the, I would say, the more conservative side. I don't know if that phrase even holds anymore these days, but the people who have been criticizing the EV mandate, saying, got to get rid of it, got to get rid of it. Well, now he's putting the brakes on it. And all I'm seeing online is negative comments about it. Today, Pierre Poilievre commenting on it as well. And I'll just let him speak for himself. Here he goes.
And today he's flip-flopped. After being a passionate advocate for banning gas-powered vehicles, calling for them to be banned by 2030 in his book, Values, which, by the way, was much more aggressive than Trudeau's plan to ban them in 2035, he's finally admitted that the Conservatives were right, just like we were right on the carbon tax. But he's doing a clumsy retreat, saying that he's going to delay this mandate. So now, businesses who would otherwise consider investing in automaking here in Canada will have to put that investment on hold while Mark Carney dithers for another year to try and figure out how he can ban people from putting gas and diesel in their trucks and cars. Mark Carney can't even get his flip-flops right. But this really has been, as I said yesterday, the Seinfeld summer for Mark Carney, a big show about nothing. You know, I think specifically about George Costanza. You remember George Costanza? He was a legend. George Costanza had this great episode where he had this fancy, high-paying job with a corner office, and he didn't do any work, like literally none, but he wanted to look busy. So he would storm up and down the hallways carrying file folders. He would leave the lights on in his car in front of the office building on the weekend, even though he wasn't there. He would yell into the phone, even though no one was on the other end of the line. And they kept paying him because he looked so busy. I have to admit, Mark Carney has looked really busy this summer. He's been flying off to Europe to sign declarations of intent that actually mean absolutely nothing. He's been holding roundtables with other politicians. You've seen politicians patting each other on the back, congratulating themselves on all the excellent meetings they've been holding. There have been letters written to ministers that then get leaked to media and are reported with great fanfare on front pages everywhere. My goodness, he's almost as busy and as useless as George Costanza. It has been a big show about nothing. Nothing is getting done under Mark Carney. Everything is getting worse. The American tariffs, which he promised to get rid of by negotiating a win, they're worse. Housing crisis is worse. Food inflation is worse. Crime is worse. Unemployment is worse. Everything has been worse under Mark Carney. But we're offering him some help. Conservatives are willing to work with any member of any party to turn things around for this country. Our priorities for the fall session are stronger take-home pay with lower taxes and lower inflation, securing our borders by ending out-of-control liberal immigration, securing our streets by locking up violent criminals, and a self-reliant Canada by opening this country up for business with a National Sovereignty Act that will rapidly approve pipelines, mines, LNG plants, export terminals built by the private sector without tax dollars that make money rather than take money. That's how we will make our economy strong, self-reliant, and stand on its own two feet. And that is how we will make this a country again where anyone who wants a job can find one. They can get a home, affordable food, meat and potatoes on the table, and a safe neighborhood with a nice Canadian flag hanging from the front porch. That's what we're working for. Let's make it happen.
All right. So, politics, politics, politics. And the negotiations continue. And Carney's right about 85% of goods still being tariff-free, but that's because of the USMCA or CUSMA deal, CUSMA, however you want to say it, the Kanakistanian way or the American way or the Mexican way. But that's because of that deal, which Donald Trump negotiated the first time he was president, said it was the best deal ever. Now it's the worst deal ever. Now they're about to renegotiate that again next year. We'll see what happens then. That's the big one. That's what we really need to be worried about. And I'm not sure that Polyev is correct about the tariffs being worse right now than they were. I guess it depends on worse compared to what, because we have seen both sides backing off on reciprocal tariffs in recent weeks. So I'm not sure that that's a really truly accurate statement. But then when Trump's making up so much stuff, he just makes up information, makes up numbers, and I'll show you tonight that not only does he make the stuff up, he makes it up and then expects people to follow suit, even tech oligarchs. I'll show you what happened there during the big tech CEO meeting. But we have other fish to fry tonight before we get on to that, not the least of which is Trump saying the Justice Department has done its job in releasing all those Epstein documents. I think there was something like 13,000 pages. Here, I'll just show you a headline before we move on. Definitely a story to take note of because it's the story that will not go away. Here it is. So he's trying to make it go away. They released all those documents. He says, we've done our job. We released the documents. House Oversight Committee this week, I was sorry, not 13,000, 33,295 pages of DOJ records related to Epstein out of around 100,000, many of which were already public. So there's still a lot more that has not been released. And he's still calling this a Democrat Epstein hoax, which is strange. It's like a totally different rhetoric, a different spin than we were getting certainly during the election campaign when Trump and his minions were making hay with the Epstein scandal, trying to pin it on Democrat. Now the fingers are pointing directly at Trump, and he's changed his tune. Now it's a Democrat hoax. And things were different before, remember, because he was being censored online. I mean, he won the first election, and this ties into our coming discussion on technology, tech giants, social media, etc., etc. But his first election, they won that with Facebook largely. And they were able to target their marketing, their campaign, using Cambridge Analytics data, which became a scandal afterward, or not a scandal, but a point of controversy in how much of that information any political organization should be allowed to use, because there's a lot of kind of private data in there. So there's all that. And then he was banned on X. He was, well, Twitter at the time, banned on Facebook, banned on YouTube, certainly after he lost his re-election bid the first time around. And then now he's sitting there with these tech oligarchs overnight at this big dinner for Trump and the tech CEOs. I wonder how much of an impact that's going to have on this Epstein scandal and the way that it unfolds in the weeks and months ahead, because he certainly seems to have a pretty firm grip on many layers of the bureaucracy in Washington right now. Elon Musk going in with Doge and purging political opponents. I call it the Department of Getting Even. But that Epstein story just won't go away.
One victims. And also Donald Trump. Coincidence? Just dumb luck. Right? Another sealed file. That crocodile smile. We did our best, says the DOJ, while the truth just fades away. Another new spin. No one will win except the rich guys with gold ID cards and closets full of secrets behind steel bars. Just a little glitch. A billionaire's privilege. That's the sound of the case. Closed.
The strangest of times, maybe the most transformative of times, they are upon us right now. We're all being tested, I would say, as well. And I'm not sure that we're doing very well. I think a lot of people failed the test during the pandemic, especially politicians and people in charge, people we thought we could trust and outsource our safety, our security, our economy, our country to. And it seems like mistakes are still being made as we backslide into history, as I watch it, maybe not repeating, but rhyming to a new rhythm, a new beat, a drum beat, the beat of war. A lot of talk, even overnight on some streams, about World War III and governments in Europe, certainly in Russia, and here in North America, preparing for World War III. In fact, Pete Hegseth on Fox this week saying that the U.S. is preparing for war. He just has war on the brain. He told Donald Trump that he would like the Department of Defense to be renamed the Department of War, and he wants that war title attached to his title. And that's exactly what happened today. Trump complied. He is in the Oval Office signing an executive order to make it so. Starting first with a little piece of Technocracy.
Thank you very much.
Oh, the audio's low.
Three very important bills, and Will, would you discuss them, please?
Can you guys hear that okay?
2808, this is the Home Buyers Privacy Protection Act. The congressman here was the lead sponsor, so I think maybe he
John Rose, yes.
say more about it than I
John,
can.
please.
Well, it's difficult for Americans to buy a home, particularly after the last 4 years, sir. But with the president's signature today, we're going to make it easy for people to buy a home without getting hassled. For years, their private personal information has been bought and sold in the open market, resulting in them getting innumerable phone calls and text messages. But with your signature today, we're going to put an end to that so that when Americans try to realize the American dream of owning a home, they're able to do so without being harassed.
Good job. Good. It's a great honor, John.
Oh, the irony. Yes, just last night, he's sitting around a table breaking bread with all the tech CEOs except Elon Musk.
There it is. And that's going to help a lot of the homeowners of our great country. John, want to hold that?
Sure.
Thank you, John, very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, Will, you go ahead.
Here we go. The DOD is now the Department of War. Watch.
Oh, I could use that at night.
And everybody needs to give the president a gift. They all have to bend the knee, suck up
we have
to
a
him.
number of executive orders for your attention, sir. From 1789 until 1947, our nation won some of its greatest military victories under the direction of a Secretary of War operating within a Department of War. Today, with this executive order, you will authorize the current Secretary of Defense and the current Department of Defense to once again embrace this great lineage and once again be named the Secretary of War and the Department of War.
So this is something we thought long and hard about. We've been talking about it for months, Pete and I, and Dan. Dan came into the fold. By the way, a great general. He headed up the, I wouldn't call it an attack. I'd almost call that one maybe even more than an attack. What he did with Iran, you saw the success of that operation. It was perfect. In fact, this was sent to me by the great company that makes that particular B-2 bomber, and it was flawless. It was actually flawless. They flew for 37 hours back and forth, and there wasn't a bolt that was out of condition. There wasn't an engine failure. There was no problem. It was a perfect attack, and it knocked out any possible nuclear capability for Iran, which nobody wanted to see, and we weren't going to put up with. So
That's not what I'm hearing. They're still pursuing a weapon. That's what I'm hearing.
So we won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything before that and in between, and then we decided to go woke, and we changed the name to Department of Defense. So we're going Department of War, and I'd like to ask our Secretary of War to say a few words. Pete Hegseth. I think it's a much more appropriate name, especially in light of where the world is right now. We have the strongest military in the world. We have the greatest equipment in the world. We have the greatest manufacturers of equipment by far. There's nobody to even compete. And you see that with this and so many other things. The Patriots are the best. Every element of the military, we make the best by far. So, Pete, I'd like to ask you and maybe Dan Raisin-Cane to say a few words, please.
Mr. President, thank you. After winning a war for independence in 1789, George Washington established the War Department, and Henry Knox was his first Secretary of War. And this country won every major war after that, to include World War I and World War II. Total victory, Mr. President, as you said. Then 150 years after that, we changed the name after World War II from the Department of War to the Department of Defense in 1947. And as you pointed out, Mr. President, we haven't won a major war since, and that's not to disparage our warfighters, whether it's the Korean War or the Vietnam War or our generation of Iraq and Afghanistan. That's to recognize that this name change is not just about renaming, it's about restoring. Words matter. It's restoring, as you've guided us to, Mr. President, restoring the warrior ethos, restoring victory and clarity as an end state, restoring intentionality to the use of force. So at your direction, Mr. President, the War Department is going to fight decisively, not endless conflicts. It's going to fight to win, not to lose. We're going to go on offense, not just on defense. Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct. We're going to raise up warriors, not just defenders. So this War Department, Mr. President, just like America, is back. Thank you for your leadership and your clarity. We're going to set the tone for this country. America first, peace through strength, brought to you by the War Department. We're back.
All right, thank you very much. Very well stated, and really it has to do with winning. We should have won every war. We could have won every war, but we really chose to be very politically correct or wokey, and we just fight forever. And then we'd, win, we wouldn't lose, really. We just fight to sort of tie. We never wanted to win. Wars that every one of them we would have won easily with just a couple of little changes or a couple of little edicts. I was told that ISIS would take 5 years to win. And Dan Kane, when I told him how long would it take, he said, I think about 4 weeks, sir. I said, what do you mean 4 weeks? I was told 5 years by the people in Washington. You know who they were, 5 years. I said, you can't do it in 4 weeks. I actually flew to Iraq to meet with him, and I met him at a big air base, and remember that famous day, right? It turned out to be a famous day for our country because you're now the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the biggest deal. And he is because he did things that everybody said he couldn't do. So they said it was going to be 5 years, and he knocked them out in about 4 weeks total, 100%. we took over, and ISIS was gone, and pretty amazing. But we never fought to win, and now if we have to fight it all, you know, we solved 7 wars. We have the one that I thought was going to be probably one of the easier ones, and that's with President Putin and Ukraine. And that turned out to be one that's a little bit more difficult, but the 7 are done. They were supposed to be much more difficult to solve. I solved every one of them, and we're going to get the other one done too. But it turned out to be a little bit more difficult than I thought. And it'll get done or they'll be held to pay. But because they're losing 6 to 7, it used to be 5. I used to tell you 5. Now it's almost 7. I guess 7,000 people last week. 7,813 people, young soldiers, died. Russian and Ukrainian, not American soldiers. But it's a shame. And it's just, you know, they're human lives, and I want to see it stop. But General Kane's done a fantastic job. And again, defeated ISIS, which they said would take a long time. And it didn't take a long time at all, and did other things that people said really couldn't happen. We have the greatest equipment in the world. We have the greatest soldiers in the world. Dan, say a few words, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. It's a true honor for me today to represent the incredible men and women of America's joint force. Today and every day, the 2.8 million service men and women stand ready to fulfill our sacred duty to protect America at home and abroad. As the President said, America's military is the single most powerful fighting force in the world. The mission you and the Secretary have given us is clear and unambiguous to deliver peace through overwhelming strength. And I remind everyone that the U.S. military can reach any adversary at the time and place of our choosing. Service to this nation is an incredible gift, and we're grateful and honored every day to do so. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, thank you, and it's an honor to sign this. And we will do that right now.
Why do I have this
I think that's a big one.
wheezy feeling in the pit of my stomach?
That's a big one.
It's a big one, Mr. President.
Do you have any questions on this subject? We're going to be discussing the G20 in a couple of minutes, but yes, please.
Mr. President, what gave you the idea for this rebrand? And a question for you, the newly minted Secretary of War. What message does this send to our enemies, to our allies, to the American people? And again, what gave you the idea for this rebrand at this moment in history, sir?
I think it sends a message of victory. I think it sends really a message of strength. We're very strong. We're much stronger than anyone would really understand. And again, you know, having the great equipment, we have just so much better. You look at all of the, just any of it, submarines as an example. We're 20 years ahead of anyone else. Nobody even compares. And I let a lot of this happen in my first term. You know, we totally rebuilt our military. And then, of course, you had that catastrophe in Afghanistan where they gave up a lot of the equipment, but a relatively small amount, but a lot. It was a lot in Afghanistan. I think it was the most, General, I'd say it was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country, the way that happened, the way they went to the wrong airport. They should have gone to Bagram, not the local little airport with no security, with tight quarters, etc. You know what happened. I think it was the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, frankly. That was under the Biden administration. That was terrible. And we were going to be leaving, but we were leaving with strength and dignity. We were going to keep Bagram because Bagram's 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. We're going to have that all to ourselves, a big, beautiful place built many years ago from money that today would be the equivalent of, you know, many, many billions of dollars. You couldn't build it. The longest runways, the most powerful runways in terms of load capacity. Yeah. And we just walked away from it. So stupid. And they were fools. The people were fools. No, we have the strongest military, and I think that indicates we have the strongest military. And, you know, we had it, and we won World War I, we won World War II, we won everything before, and as I said, we won everything in between. And we were very strong, but we never fought to win. We just didn't fight to win. We didn't lose anything, but we didn't fight to win. We could have won every one of those wars quickly, but they went a route that I think was probably politically correct, but not correct for our nation. So I think the Department of War sends a signal. Yeah, please.
You alluded to this a little while ago, but you said that this rename is a, quote, a good reflection of where the world is at right now. How do you square naming it the Department of War when you've been pursuing peace in so many different parts of the world?
Well, I think I've gotten peace because of the fact that we're strong. If we weren't strong, those 7 deals I told you about, the 7 wars, a majority of them wouldn't have happened. They happened for 2 reasons, trade and our strength. Those are the 2 reasons. And probably strength may be more important than trade. So if we, I was very proud of all those wars. Those were wars that could not be settled, and I settled all of them. And we'll get the other one settled also. That'll get settled. But without the strength, we wouldn't have settled any of them. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, is it your expectation that Congress will codify this name change in the law?
I don't know, but we're going to find out. But I'm not sure they have to. We're signing an executive order today, but we're going to find out. We're going to see. If they do, we're going with it, and we're going with it very strongly. There's a question as to whether or not they have to, but we'll put it before Congress.
Do you know how much this rebrand will actually cost? And are there any concerns about, the Pentagon's mission of actually cutting back on spending?
But not a lot. We know how to rebrand without having to go crazy. We don't have to recarve a mountain or anything. We're going to be doing it not in the most expensive. We're going to start changing the stationery as it comes due and lots of things like that. We're not going to be doing things like have been done in the past when they changed the name of forts that shouldn't have been changed. Those names of the forts should not have been changed, at least for the most part. And as you know, many of them have been changed back already. At the request of the communities, every one of those communities said, we want our name back, like Fort Bragg as an example. The people in that community wanted that name back. They refused to call it anything else but Fort Bragg. So we're not going to be spending very much money on that. Yes, please.
When you spoke with the Europeans and Zelensky earlier this week, did you preview this for them, and did you say what security guarantees they might be involved in?
This is nothing to do with anybody but the United States of America, the people of America. This is who I talk to about changing a name. This is a very important change because it's an attitude, and we know how to win. We've been winning, and we're going to win like you've never seen. Wait till these factories start to open up that are being built all over the country. You're going to see things happen in this country that nobody expects. We have over $17 trillion in investment coming into the country. We never did anything even remotely close to that. No other country has either, by the way. So you're going to see things that are pretty amazing. But it's really about winning.
And what about the security guarantees aspect of that with Ukraine, sir?
Well, we'll work that out. We'll help them. Look, we want to save a lot of lives, so we'll do something with that. I think people expect that. We'll help them. Europe will be first in by far, and they want to be first, and they want to see it end. Europe wants to see it end, and it'll end. It'll end all of a sudden. It's going to come together. You watch. Did you want something right?
Right here.
Yeah, behind you, please. Yes.
Yes, sir. You haven't been shy about taking bold, decisive, offensive action to protect American values. Strikes in Iran, strikes this past Tuesday on the positively ID'd Nicaragua narco-terrorists. Is that going to be a critical function of the Department of War?
It depends on the individual instance. We don't want drugs coming in from Venezuela or anybody else or any place else, and we'll be tough on that. We don't want human trafficking. We don't want to see people coming in where they open their prisons from all over the world and they dump their prisoners into our country, which is what they did in the Biden administration, where they took insane asylums and places that held people that were seriously mentally ill, mentally incompetent, mentally dangerous, and they dumped those people into our country, and we're trying to get them out now. What they've done, what the Democrats and Biden have done to this country will go down in infamy. What they have done to our country, and especially that. They created the worst inflation we've ever had. That's nothing compared to what they did with the people in our country right now. And we're getting them out, and it's not easy when you have the liberal judges destroying our country. But We've won them all. We've won it all. Ultimately won it all. Hard process. It should be easier. We know who it is. We know exactly who we're looking for. We had 11,000 murderers dropped into our country. We've gotten a lot of them out. Or in some cases, they're so dangerous, we were afraid to get them out because they'd come back in. But for the last 120 days, 0 people came in. Can you imagine? This is me speaking, but these are figures developed by, they say, a pretty liberal group of people. They admit that 0 people came into our country. Think of that. A year ago, it was millions of people were coming in. Millions. They were coming in. You could look at them and you could say, big trouble. And that's what we have in our country. But we're getting them out, and despite that, we're doing really well. Yeah.
Okay. So, numbers. I've just learned that you just can't take whatever he says at face value. Take it all with a healthy dose of skepticism, because he makes stuff up all the time. Case in point, he had this tech this dinner with all the tech CEOs, Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and this is overnight. And Zuckerberg caught on a hot mic saying, like literally, he says, I wasn't ready to do our announcement. I wasn't sure what number you wanted to go with. So they've got, he had, I'll play the clip. Zuckerberg delivers the information, but then thinks, I guess he must not realize that he's still on mic. And he's basically acknowledging that they've been discussing various numbers. What number are we going to use? Here, I'll play the clip. It's just, you can't make this stuff up. Okay. Here's Zuckerberg at the dinner last night. And we're going to get into this more because this ties right into everything we're going to talk about tonight.
How much are you spending, would you say, over the next few years?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I think it's probably going to be something like, I don't know, at least $600 billion through 28 in the U.S. Yeah.
It's a lot.
No, it's significant.
That's a lot. Thank you, Mark. It's great to have you.
Paying attention, but sorry, I wasn't ready to do our for announcement. He said I wasn't sure what number you wanted to go with.
I wasn't sure what number you wanted to go with. I wasn't ready, he said. It was all pre-planned. Was not just a spontaneous question. He knew it was going to come. They just hadn't worked out exactly what the answer was going to be yet. There it is right there. I didn't know what number, which of the made up numbers you wanted me to use. I guess that's what it means. Oh, man. Let's take a little break. When we come back, we're going to dig more into that CEO tech giant dinner with Donald Trump, the ramifications of that, and it's timely because this is going to expand into a broader discussion tonight on technocracy.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let's I don't know if he's in the back room there or not. Yeah, he's there. Let's bring our sort of co-host for the night on. He's waiting in the back room, and he's been writing some Substack articles about technocracy. There he is. There you are, sir. Hello, Dragon.
What's up? How are you, Mavericks?
Montreal tonight. Thanks for joining
me
us
well?
on the program. Yeah, a little crackly, but you're okay.
All right.
Now, just a little housekeeping item. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I should have warned you, but this is totally organic and not pre-planned. But I've been thinking around here, and this ties into what our discussion is about tonight, technocracy, spinning narratives, truth, reality. Your name. Somebody a long time ago challenged you on your name, Dragon, and said, what is your real name? And what is your real name?
Well, my real name is Ian Leonard Vezo, so I'm from Montreal. And, I do sometimes some collaboration for Maverick, aka Rick Walker, as you know. And I'm a thinker, philosopher sometimes, and a lot of things, I think.
Journalist, although some people have been challenging both of us, saying, you guys aren't journalists. Well, I have news for you. We're going to get into that subject another night, too, in more depth. But more about your name. See, as a journalist, I have always been committed to truth, transparency, democracy. And as a result, I've always just used my real name, not a stage name, not a performance name, not a nickname. I am who I am. As a journalist, a real journalist, I've always felt that it's important to use my real name. I'm just wondering, would you be open to just from this moment on, would it be okay if I just referred to you as Ian, if we just used Ian as your name on the program instead of like
I would like that, actually. It would be perfect, I think.
Yeah, the reason
Even
I say
the time
that,
I think it's better because I'm not a stage man. I'm not here to make a show.
Right.
So, yeah.
Because I see all these other programs that have come on over the past, well, even past couple of years, certainly before the last federal election in Canada. And these programs, they're all using like made up names. It's not really their names. I don't really want to call everybody out, but I think you guys probably know some of them. You can just think of some yourself, but this is who I am. And those people I think in many cases, people probably don't even know the real names of these people who are online. So anyway, I just encourage you to, if you're cool with it, I'm going to just call you Ian from now on instead of Dragon, because it's like not so much a show, but a program, right? News program.
Well, I'll be glad to use my real name from now on. So let's go with it.
And therein lies reality, and reality is truth, and truth is the path forward to actual freedom. And so let's dig into tonight's broader discussion. I know that you have been talking about technocracy, writing about it in your Substack. And I thought, we've been talking about having this discussion today. Trump meeting with these tech CEOs. I thought it's just timely. Tonight would be a great night to do this because of him meeting with those guys and everything kind of going on. It all just seems to tie together tonight. And so I think, maybe what we should do before we get into this broader discussion is define what technocracy is, because even as you've spoken to me about it, your vision of it, I think, has been a little murky for me. So can you just elaborate on what you think technocracy is?
So the definition of technocracy is when you have an expert, basically, who's taking decision for an elected government. So to give you an example, to make it clear for everyone, when we had COVID, in the COVID era, we had our government being told by the WHO what to do or what kind of situation to use, right? So the tool that they were telling us to use, actually, the way it's done, this is what technocracy is. Because if you look at a power structure of government, is that as a pyramid, you have the people on the bottom and the government on top. So this is how you structure basically the hierarchy behind the people and the government, and you have corporation and the executive and legislative in the between, right? So you add a layer on top of your government as an unelected person, which is, for example, like I gave with COVID, is Tedros. So all those little things were basically making people scratch their mind about what's going on, right? And on YouTube and whatnot, we were hearing people, other YouTubers, using words like authoritarianism or totalitarianism, and so on. So from there, I was scratching my head because there's a part of it, but it doesn't quite match what was going on. So I was looking for the right terminology to, call what's going on right now. And technocracy, I think, fits into that new era, because it's really a new era that we're going through now.
Yeah, and yet, are you aware of the history of technocracy and its Canadian ties?
Actually, not quite. I know that from a research I done earlier today, it can go back, I think, to 1930s. It was spoken in politics to a certain degree, but wasn't applied to this degree today with the technology that we have, because algorithm and artificial intelligence can also play a role of the so-called expert in the between. So,
yeah, it does go back to the 1930s. It was basically a U.S. philosophy and political ideology, but it really found, its tentacles came all the way up into Canada, and and certainly into Western Canada. And this is where things get really interesting. And I don't know how many people are aware, but this involves Elon Musk's grandfather. Were you aware of that?
Seriously?
No. Yes.
No.
Yes.
Now I'm just picked on my curiosity, bro.
And as
Tell me more.
And the arrest of Elon Musk's grandfather, and this all ties into not just the technology, which this is why I've been sort of a little confused about the way you've been talking about technocracy, because the history of this goes back deep into Canada, Western Canada. It all relates to what's going on today with the 51st state stuff, with the changes geopolitically that we're experiencing, the realignment of political allies and countries, the effort.
The Alberta wallet.
Oh, well, it's about a form of socialism, if you will. It's about the Social Credit Party, the CCF out in Western Canada, the separatist movement. It's about the view of many people that Canada isn't even a real country. Elon Musk, his Canadian ties, his education in Canada, his family living here, the family's moved to South Africa, apartheid, all of these things, and all of it playing into not just what we're seeing in terms of technocracy in North America, but also the political philosophy that we're seeing drive these geopolitical tensions, these geopolitical realignments, and what I keep referring to as the new world order or the new global order that we're seeing emerge out of Russia and China and India. And I keep saying Donald Trump is part of it. Elon Musk is definitely part of it. And it's all
convergence.
dividing the world into spheres of political domination geographically. Asia sort of dominated by China, Eurasia, Europe, Russia dominates that, kind of takes over all that, and the United States takes over basically the Western Hemisphere in North America, probably even Central America, all of that. This stuff goes back to the 1930s. You can find maps referring to it all. This goes into what Dugin in Russia, the philosopher over there, who is Putin's brain, as we've told people about, his philosophy, and it just fits so nicely and neatly into this technocracy, which really has its roots all the way back into the 1930s. Here's a definition from 1938 from Technocracy, Inc., which is the organization that was founded by a gentleman by the name of Howard Scott, I believe his name was, and Elon Musk's grandfather, his maternal grandfather, was involved in this. And this is the definition of technocracy that was offered in 1938 by this organization. Technocracy is the science of social engineering, the scientific operation of the entire social mechanism to produce and distribute goods and services to the entire population of this continent. For the first time in human history, it will be done as a scientific, technical engineering problem. There will be no place for politics or politicians, finance or financiers, rackets or racketeers. Technocracy states that this method of operating the social mechanism of the North American continent is now mandatory because we have passed from a state of actual scarcity, which is an economic term, into the present status of potential abundance, in which we are now held to an artificial scarcity forced upon us in order to continue a price system which can distribute goods only by means of a medium of exchange. Technocracy states that price and abundance are incompatible. The greater the abundance, the smaller the price. In a real abundance, there can be no price at all. Only by abandoning the interfering price control and substituting a scientific method of production and distribution can an abundance be achieved. Technocracy will distribute by means of a certificate of distribution available to every citizen from birth to death. Did you get that? Technocracy will distribute production and distribution.
Efficiencies.
By means of a certificate of distribution. They get to decide what you get, available to every citizen from birth to death. The technate will encompass the entire American continent. See, a North American Union. From Panama, which is where we've seen Trump asserting U.S. influence and dominance and really ownership again over the Panama Canal since taking power again, to the North Pole, because the natural resources like the oil in Alberta and the uranium in Ontario encompass the entire American continent from Panama to the North Pole, because the natural resources and the natural boundary of this area make it an independent, self-sustaining geopolitical unit. Do you see how neatly that fits into everything we're seeing coming out of the Trump administration, out of Russia, out of the philosophy coming from Dugin in Russia, out of this, this America first? We're going to pull back in. We're not going to be involved in Europe. We don't really care about what's going on in Asia that much, except that they seem to want to go to war with China. I'm not so sure about that. But this is all about, taking over Greenland, taking over Panama, 51st state, Canada. It ties all
into
that. It's
a eureka moment.
Oh, yeah. But it's really nothing new. This information has been out there. It's just that most people are just not aware, because
exactly
it's not spoken about that much. But if you are from Western Canada, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta in particular, you maybe know a little bit about this, or maybe a lot, because Elon Musk's grandfather, maternal grandfather, was absolutely involved in all of this stuff. Integral.
That can tie to where the idea of we are entering into a technocracy era come from is because, well, okay, it could tie to it to a certain degree, because when I was a kid around 1990s, I was a Dungeon and Dragon player kind of thing, right? Those games that you were playing on table with dice and whatnot. And there were some game that was related to a near future, like 2020 or around the same era that we are in, where people now have cybernetic attached to them, right? So now you got Elon Musk and Neuralink. So to me, it was sort of it was the link between the whole thing, but I was wrong on this one to a certain degree till I realized where the definition of technocracy was fitting with everything. So that's where I had that, eureka moment, like I would say.
So, I mean, you keep coming back to the technology, which is certainly driving the ideology again and driving the philosophy. It always has, more so today than it certainly was in the 1930s, because back in the 30s, technology was at a completely different place. But the technocrats were certainly pointing to the Industrial Revolution and saying that because society had been transformed so dramatically through industrialization, that a utopian society essentially was upon us. All we had to do was grasp it. But the key to doing all that, and this is my assessment of it, the key to doing it was really to put experts, technocrats in charge, essentially saying democracy is obsolete, that the only way to achieve maximum efficiency is by putting people like Elon Musk or other experts in certain areas in charge and let them run the government. And so in that way, some people saw that, and I think still do, as an extreme threat. So in fact, the technocracy movement, which generated actual political parties or spin-offs in Canada, ultimately was deemed to be illegal in Canada, which I think might surprise you as well.
Yeah, it is. Well, that does tie to those conversation that we had where we were, say, getting to the point where, or the conclusion that this is where you have your freedom and constitutional right being eroded, if you will, through decision. For example, during a pandemic, if you deem to stay home because it would be better not to get sick, that would erode your freedom of right to a certain degree because, the expert told you not to do so. So this is where we have those other, YouTubers and independent media or influencer talking about totalitarianism or other sort of fascism.
Look at the face on that guy. Does that look familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Who's that look like?
Hold on, I get to look at it because there's a timer in front of his face.
To me,
all right, I see.
Yeah. Does he look like anyone familiar? Resemble anyone?
Not sure.
To me, he looks a lot like Elon Musk. Oh, his face looks like Elon Musk to me. It isn't Elon Musk. I'm just saying it looks a lot like him, and that's because that's his maternal grandfather. And so, as we look at the Canadian roots of, Elon Musk, this brings us to his maternal grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, whose life in Saskatchewan shaped a legacy, really, of bold ideas and controversial beliefs. And so he was born in 1902 in Minnesota, log cabin, and then he was raised in Waldeck, Saskatchewan. Haldeman was a chiropractor, an adventurer, a political firebrand in Canada. Now, the Great Depression hit him hard, like many Saskatchewan farmers. He lost his farm in the 1930s Dust Bowl. And back in those days, in Alberta, residents might be well served if they remember a little bit about their own history, because in the Dust Bowl, Western Canada was hit especially hard. And this is a picture of Saskatchewan in the 1930s. And parts of Saskatchewan literally turned to sand because of the drought and the hard economic conditions out there. And Alberta and places like it really bailed out by Eastern Canada because of changes in the way that federal funds were being distributed. So there was aid that went out to farmers in Western Canada from the East and kept them afloat in many cases during the Great Depression. And there's an image from the Saskatchewan Archives Board of that time period. And Musk's grandfather lost their farm at that time. Joshua Haldeman was his name.
Okay.
So as a result of,
that ties a lot into a lot of stuff. It does tie with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So Haldeman, as a result of the hard times, came up with, a pretty harsh worldview, I would say. And in the 1960s, he wrote a book called The International Conspiracy in Health. And in it, he writes, an invisible government working to carry out the objectives of the international conspiracy is operating in every country. Sound familiar? Do we hear rhetoric like that again today? Yeah, a lot of this stuff coming to bear again, right?
I'm just looking at the mirror of our world of today.
So Musk's grandfather, Haldeman, believed in an international communist plot controlled by banks, media, universities. He was pushing floor policies, even back then, like water fluoridation to prevent cavities and a public health issue, and mass vaccinations. And his sons, that's what they believed in back then, even at that time. So what else? Do you have any thoughts on this? Are you seeing any similarities, mirroring, echoes from the past?
Boy, I do. Now it making more sense with what I'm seeing right now as the evolution of what politics is. Because the way I see it, and don't get me wrong, guys, I'm not all for it, okay? Technocracy is not the thing that I was wishing to see in my lifetime with what I was familiarized with in the past. But it's scaring me, to be quite honest. But the thing is that it's an evolution. It's like Darwin evolution of mankind or any other species. Politic is one species on its own self.
So this is the guy who is credited with sort of as the father of technocracy, described by some as a philosophy, others as also maybe a political ideology. And then, of course, the whole movement really began to take hold in Canada in the 1930s. And then in the 1940s, Elon Musk's grandfather, Haldeman, became a political force in Regina. He led the Saskatchewan Social Credit Party and even founded his own party, the Total War and Defense. But his most striking political stance had to be his embrace of technocracy, this movement that we're talking about tonight that argued scientists and engineers, not politicians, should run society. And
that's exactly it.
Yeah. And so in 1940, he wrote an article in Technocracy Digest, and he wrote, "It is possible to build this new order of mankind, new order, this new America here and now." And of course, that's because of industrialization at the time. But fast forward to today, and what are we going through? Transformation through AI, right? And social media and space travel. Elon Musk at the forefront of all of this. Isn't that interesting?
So
and an
there's a
act of
part of corporocracy into it also.
Mhm.
Scary.
So they were led by this guy, Howard Scott, and he promised a utopia free of crime, free of debt. We're hearing a lot of people today who are believing that somehow Trump is going to just do away with all debt. And what do they call it? Nacera, and dream on. But anyway, he also said that work would be limited to 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. And Musk's grandfather was captivated by it all, taking a leadership role. But then the Canadian government found out about this stuff, and they banned technocracy in 1940. They called it subversive. They said, and Haldeman was actually arrested. His grandfather arrested for disloyalty. And he eventually ended up leaving the movement because he later said, he admitted that he said that technocracy had become a scientific Frankenstein pushing for the annexation of Canada.
Wow. Did I nail something?
This is nothing new. This is nothing. This is all. Look, here's a map from, this is 1940 Technocracy Inc. And this is how they view the Union being recreated. This part of the world carved away. There's Greenland, Mexico, Canada, Panama. It's all there. From the North Pole
1994 Oceania.
So this is what they were looking for. See, and so they were also, at times, the people involved in this movement, they were calling truly for the overthrow of the Canadian government. And at the time, Musk's grandfather responded with this ad in the Regina Leader Post. This when the Canadian government declared Technocracy Inc. an illegal organization because they were literally calling for the overthrow of the government. But hey, you know, I'm a political prisoner. Is any of this beginning to resonate like as an echo through time? It says here, statement of patriotism by those who were technocrats. The political government of Canada, by order in council, has declared Technocracy Inc. to be an illegal organization. This action was unjustified and unwarranted and can be classified as a tactical political blunder. Technocracy Inc. from its inception has been unequivocally opposed to Nazism, fascism, and communism. Well, they did.
Am I back 5 years ago?
Except that they did get connected to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. But anyway, I digress. On September 5th, 1939, technocrats all over Canada wired Prime Minister Mackenzie King that they stood ready to defend Canada from any alien attack following the issue of Technocracy's general regulations on home defense on June 1st, which was published in most newspapers. Technocrats all over Canada contacted the RCMP, the city police, and the military authorities, offering their services in any capacity required for the defense of Canada. Depends on what kind of Canada you want on the other side, I guess. Those who are members of Technocracy Inc. as loyal Canadian citizens will continue to render full support to the defense program of the Dominion of Canada. Technocracy Inc. was the outstanding patriotic organization in Canada. Therefore, those who were its members must view the present action of the political government as an attempt at subversive sabotage of a national patriotic organization, unless this action is immediately rescinded.
Can I stop you one moment?
Of course.
It does remind me one party, the Maverick Party, right? It does kind of remind me what they were trying to appeal to.
Well, there are a number of separatist parties that have emerged out in Western Canada, and you also have political movements and organizations like the Alberta Prosperity Project and others. right, who continue to work for the separation of Alberta and or the destruction of Canada and or the annexation of Canada by the United States, making us the 51st state. Although we better hurry up, Canada. Greenland might be the 51st. We might be the 52nd, or maybe even 53rd, depending on who else Donald Trump goes after. But all this, or maybe Elon Musk, who seems to have backed off a little bit on the creation of a new political party since being sort of ousted from Trump's inner circle after spending 240 million dineros in order to get Trump elected, and was in there like a dirty shirt running Doge, the Department of Getting Even, and collecting who knows how much actual sensitive data while he was in there, and had big balls and his team of technocrats working to skim off whatever data. I don't know. Has any of that information been unethically or maybe illegally even obtained by Musk or his workers or his minions? I can't say for sure, but I'll tell you this. He was in there pretty tight, and the other irony in all of this is that he's in there calling for government efficiency and cuts in government spending. Elon Musk, I think, has been quite possibly the person who has benefited most from U.S. debt. I'll throw it over to you for a comment or two.
Well, the Doge actually was, I think, a huge technocrat move from the U.S. government. And I'll tell you why. Because Doge was using basically an IRS, if I do believe too, using AI. Oh, no, sorry, IRS doesn't. But yeah, Doge does use AI basically to, for efficiency, tell you if you should keep your job or not, and probably make the company run efficiently with less people to run the show. So is that technocracy when you use an AI to tell you how many people you should lay out of your company?
Well, Elon Musk is not a multi-billionaire because he was running just a free market economy. It's not like he was an entrepreneur, came up with an idea for something and built a better mousetrap and the world beat a path to his door. He is as rich as he is because of government contracts. And as a result of his activities and his approach to business, he really has found ways to exploit the public-private partnership concept. And nobody has benefited more than Elon Musk. And during his time certainly since, creating Tesla and then SpaceX, he has usurped more wealth than anyone in history, as the United States has amassed more debt at any time in its history. So there's irony there.
Makes sense.
This is a guy who's saying we need to cut government spending, but he's the one who has really pulled in the most money of anybody. And while the country has been going deep in debt. So essentially the United States going deeper and deeper into debt in order to pay Elon Musk and give him all these government grants and subsidies.
Yep. Which is another way to destabilize the economy.
Well, or maybe stabilize it. It depends on what you get back out of your investment, right? But that's part of the socioeconomic equation at play here with technocracy. And technocracy, really viewed by many as sort of a hybrid form of socialism. Some even suggesting that countries like Singapore are actually a technocracy today. Others going even so far as to say countries like even Russia or China are essentially forms of technocracy, although I wouldn't say pure forms by any stretch, but Russia may be falling into line with that. And certainly these countries, especially in Russia, Russia is an oligarchy. And in that sense, it also has become a form of a technocracy because those oligarchs control companies that are technological in nature. And those technocrats or those oligarchs control a lot of the power and also drive political policy, even through an autocratic, a democratic autocracy. Maybe I can call that what is going on in the Federation of Russia today.
What corporocracy would work?
These are real things.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned China actually, and since 2018, if my memory is correct from my research, so they're using WeChat and, well, their social credit basically to, well, if I say something against the government and criticize Xi Jinping and whatnot, I can lose my job, I could lose my apartment, I could lose whatnot, so many things. You can even being thrown out of the window in that case if you say something against the government, or being cracked down on if you're a person with a CEO of a company. Rick, for example, you would be taken away from the Maverick company or Inc., whatever, because you would criticize the government on WeChat. So this is a form of technocracy on its own.
And in fact, censorship was front and center during much of Trump's first presidency, certainly after he was ousted the first time. Now he's come back, but there he sits at this dinner overnight. There's Zuckerberg, there's Bill Gates, there's Melania Trump. What did Melania Trump post on social media? She said, heading into this dinner, the robots are here, which is to say that this new artificial intelligence era is upon us, the era of robots. Everything is changing. And so here Trump sits. Very weird, isn't it? That he's sitting there so friendly with Gates and Zuckerberg, both of whom have been run companies that censored him, actually banned him from their social media platforms when they were trying to get rid of Trump. But now he's back in power and they're breaking bread with the guy, while Melania acknowledges that the two guys on each side of Trump are reshaping the world through artificial intelligence and robotics. And they truly are.
Yes. Well, I don't remember.
They were talking today about vaccines and genetic engineering and all of these issues that are front and center and really at the core of a lot of the issues we've been facing, certainly since the pandemic. And there's the father of the vaccine right there with the two guys on each side of him, while the guy in charge of who gave us the vaccine through Operation Warp Speed is also speaking out of both sides of his mouth, just like a typical politician, saying that he wants to know the truth about what the efficacy or the damage of the vaccines truly is, so he can put an end to all of the controversy once and for all. And he wants to hold people accountable if there was any harm that came from it. But I don't know if I should believe anything the guy says anymore, because he's just a walking, talking, and sitting, whining, dining contradiction. That's what he is. It's weird.
Yep. No, it's true. Actually, the American Army is using an AI actually to calculate for them rightfully where the best way to target someone. Or I think they're also using AI for piloting aircraft. So I'm telling you, if that's not technocracy on its own, I'm just wondering what it is.
Do you know who David Icke is?
Yes, well, the names ring a bell for sure.
Yeah, he's very, very well known, right?
Yep.
And this is something that even he has taken note of. I'm certainly not the first to the party here, but I think it's important to highlight a lot of this stuff because, as you've been talking about technocracy, I think you've been focused very much on the technology itself, but there's so much more behind it that's, that forms the foundation of that. And that is the philosophy, the ideology, and the history. Here's David.
Well, it's been another week in which the Trump regime has been going on and on about taking over Greenland. So what's the reason? What's behind it all? Well, have a look at this map. This is a map of a group of countries they called the Technate, which Elon Musk's grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, was involved in creating when he was the major player, or a major player at least, in a group called Technocracy Inc. in the 1930s. And it was operating, this Technocracy Inc., in Canada and the UK. Now note that this Technate runs from the north of South America, including Venezuela, up through Panama, which Trump has been threatening, the United States, Canada, which Trump wants to be the 51st US state, and, yes, Greenland. Just a coincidence, nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry about. Nothing
Only
to
a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence. I always say that, right?
No big deal. No big deal. It's just, just taking over all these countries. Just because he says he wants to take over these places, don't take him seriously or anything. And that was back in April with David Icke. And what have we seen just in the past week, the last few days? We've seen this massive military buildup around Venezuela. We've seen Trump actually release video of this vessel, this boat, this alleged drug boat. They blew it out of the water to send a strong message to Venezuela. We've seen in the Trump 1.0, he wanted to get rid of Maduro back then, was not successful. Now they're really going after him. They've increased the bounty on Maduro's head out of Venezuela to $50 million US. Do you know how much of a bounty they put on Osama bin Laden's head?
Oh, God, I don't remember, but it was around 10,000 or 25,000, something like that.
No. It was a lot more than that. Not in the thousands. It was in the millions. It was. I believe it was 28 million. It was just a little more than half of what they're now offering for Maduro's head.
Well, right? Look, Rick, you got to look at the inflation today.
Well, yeah, but that whole thing talking about the Technate, right, and technocracy. Remember, as we were kind of leading up to this conversation tonight over many nights, remember I told you that I never really paid a lot of attention to this stuff when I was younger, but when I was a kid, I was certain I had seen a book or something, and it was this. This is what I had seen. I'm pretty sure at a used bookstore, which I used to go to once or twice a week. Every weekend I went down there when I would go to this repertory cinema to see all these weird art films and fringe films and stuff, right? Because I was just like that when I was in high school. And so I would go down there, and I remember seeing this. I may even have seen this in a school library, but I never really took the time to read it. I opened it and I remembered reading a little bit of whatever it was in this book, but this isn't actually a book. I think it's a magazine. And there it is.
Yeah, I think it's the one of the magazine you have referred to earlier.
Yeah, so this has been around for a long time. This idea, this ideology, outlawed, as I say, in Canada, in the 1940s, I believe. And it led to a bunch of arrests. And that's because they were like literally calling for the overthrow of the government, at least some of the people involved. They wrote it down too, which probably wasn't too smart, as I recall, learning about this stuff over time. I'd never read that magazine, but maybe I'll find some way to get a hold of the contents inside.
I think they wanted to arrest them because they were ahead of their time.
Yeah, but this was, it wasn't just about the technology. It was about their view of technology, how to use technology to get to a utopian society, essentially, right?
Mhm.
And so it was really a social movement, a political movement within the United States and Canada, and it favored technocracy as a system of government over representative democracy and partisan politics. And so, historians say that it was this guy, Howard Scott, and his Technical Alliance and Technocracy Incorporated, prior to the internal factionalism that dissolved the organization later during World War II. And technocracy was ultimately then overshadowed by other proposals for dealing with the crisis of the Great Depression. But at the time, very appealing to people leading up to the Great Depression and certainly during the Great Depression, because people were looking for answers in the face of all this economic hardship. And certainly people today looking for answers after the pandemic and the lockdowns and the way that we've used
Exactly.
right? And so a lot of these resurfacing, and as I say, kind of as I've been trying to say have been saying for a while, we're getting this convergence of political ideologies. I call it communofascism, have been calling it that, but it's this hybrid of populism. It is a form of populism. Some are saying it's nationalism. I think nationalism is just an element of it. And because of all of this going on right now, Ian, I think what we're experiencing is the not just geopolitical shifts, but a complete realignment of political ideologies and even political brands. But of course, people long taught about the left and the right. The communists and the socialists are on the left, and the fascists and the Nazis are on the right. And then there's stuff in the middle. But I don't think that these political charts hold true anymore. What we're getting today is this complete realignment, this hybridization of all these political ideas. And even when you look at the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party, those are brands and people are picking teams. But I don't really do that. I look at what are they really saying? What's the political ideology behind this stuff? And as I'm looking at what has been going on with Trump, populism, MAGA, the integration, bringing a lot of these people during the election in from the RFK Jr. camp. I even saw communists coming in order to win the election. Trump and MAGA, they had to expand their tent to bring in more people to get the political critical mass there at the polls in order to defeat the Democrats or the liberals, right? Because they've really gone to war with liberalism exactly the way they have in Russia, exactly the way Dugin in his neo-Eurasianistic philosophy envisions the world. It's about going to war with liberalism. That's the driving force behind it. That's what they're using. And not just liberalism, even that term, I would say, is kind of and not really accurate, because what they're really going to war with, and you heard Trump say it here today, and it's part of this technocracy hybridization. He says wokeism. Department of Defense no, that's too woke. So we're going to call it the Department of War, because they're at war with progressivism and wokeism, not liberalism per se, especially on the North American side, But when they say liberal, what they really mean is any kind of progressive idea. And I think that they've, like so much in politics, they're taking it way too far, and they're embracing extremist. They're becoming extremist in the embrace of this war itself, and they're taking things too far, in my view. And so now it's like they're finding wokeism in places where it probably should not be applied. Like, is they're calling it the Department of War? I'm very uneasy, because this means it's like a shift. They're going to adopt the warrior ethos. So in order, like, they don't want peace. They want freaking war. They want to be aggressive killers.
And this is basically, I'm sorry, but to a certain degree, it contradicts what Trump was saying when he was doing his run for the second term, because he was saying, I'm going to be the peace president. I'm going to be there for peace. Give me 24 hours. I'm going to call Putin and whatnot, and everything's done. Okay. No more war. Everything's good. But what's going on right now? What do we have?
But see, as I've been reading Dugan, and as I have been looking at this stuff, because, you know, you kind of attracted me to it or pushed me over to it. What I see is that through this political ideology, either of them, and I think we're in North America, we're getting this hybridization of Duganism and technocracy and and nationalism, this new version of nationalism, communism. So there is absolutely socialism and a controlled market economy, a planned economy through tariffs, not free market, totally planned economy. You're getting this ideology because they want to reshape the entire world. You know what that means? Do people not understand that inevitably that leads to war? Because it absolutely calls for conflict. If you are going to essentially, this isn't just about overthrowing the Canadian government by a bunch of technocrats now because they want to put some elites in charge to run everything because they know best, because they're experts in their fields. So democracy be damned. No, this is about literally overthrowing virtually every country in the world to create geopolitical spheres of dominance. Russia taking over Ukraine, Europe, China taking over Taiwan, much of Asia. Although in Dugan's original work, he didn't even count China in. They were basically going to split the world in half, kind of like George Orwell in 1984, right? That's kind of what his vision was.
That's what I was saying. Yeah. I was seeing this, actually, the makeup of the map that, well, I did told you a few months ago, before actually I put out the technocracy theory around, if you will. I told you about how the world is looking like 1984 at some point in our conversation. And you told me, yeah, there's when Trump started to go with the rhetoric that he's going to take over this part, calling the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, and so on. This is where I told you it's looked like 1984, my friend. And what did you told me? You said, yes, there's a little bit of that, I think. But now with what I just lay out, I think we are making sense of all that.
Yes, there is definitely an element to that, and it is about reshaping reality, which is why, because that whole thing with the Gulf of Mexico versus Gulf of America, right? That's about reshaping reality. That's a large part of making all this happen, because it's about getting people in their heads to buy into this and to begin to view things differently. And as I've said before, one of the things that started to really clue me in was my conversation with retired General Paul Vallely, who told me off camera in back studio that the key to overthrowing Canada is to convince people that Canada is not a real country. And I keep hearing that theme or that idea recycled over and over again in these narratives. It's extremely important. It's important to them because they do want to make Canada the 51st state. They need to convince you erroneously that Canada is not a real country. Some people may view it that way, but it's not actually true. And I'm working on something important with regard to that I'll be releasing in the weeks ahead if I can find the time to get it done. But here's Musk in the White House before his falling out with Trump, talking about democracy.
Feedback loop. Okay, we'd have to if you sorry. So tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes. If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large unelected bureaucracy.
So he's making it sound like he's in favor of democracy of some kind, but he's a complex character, and I'm not sure that he really means that. And I can show you why. Let me get all the way back over here with these slides that I have prepared tonight, because in February of this year, and this was in response to some stuff that Justin Trudeau had been saying. So he posts this: Canada is not a real country. That was back in February of 25 this year. That really concerns me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that has been scrubbed from the internet since then, but he did post that. How does that make you feel as a Canadian?
Wrong.
So here's
wrong,
a guy,
my friend.
here's a guy who actually I saw just today, Tesla, if Elon Musk hits certain goals, Tesla will pay him $1 trillion bonus. I saw that today. That money coming out of our pockets. Elon Musk is a technocrat. Elon Musk is an elite. He's standing there in the Oval Office talking about democracy. It's not really a democracy. It's a bureaucracy. He doesn't believe in America as a democracy. He never did. And if he believed in democracy, I don't think he would have been offering up to $1 million as prize money for people to vote for Trump, which I think probably is illegal. But who's going to challenge the guy who has that kind of cash and that kind of power? A guy who literally bought his position behind Trump at the desk in the Oval Office for $240 million, bought access to all the data in government computer servers, which his staff has been going through. You think that guy really believes in democracy? Whose maternal grandfather was a technocrat, who really, that whole movement doesn't believe in democracy. They believe in a technate, a government run by elites, elite technocrats, experts in fields, not democratically elected.
Engineers.
Yes.
And so on. What is
scientists.
Elon Musk? What is Elon Musk is an engineer.
Yes.
Hello, guys. I'll go Joseph style. Hello, folks.
That's the history. And this ideology really, I think, in many respects, even more so than in the United States, in Canada, this is where the ideology of technocracy has its roots, took form, and began to spread, really, now all over the world in various forms. And I think the technocracy movement may have actually influenced the work of Alexander Dugin in Russia, who now it's come full circle, and that work is now re-influencing people politically here in North America and in MAGA, although I think largely unwittingly, and also being driven by Elon Musk, because of course he's familiar with all this stuff. His maternal grandfather was instrumental in the creation, the foundation, the formation of the concepts, and now he is living that out. His fortune made through a division of technocracy within the federal government in the United States. That's why he's in the US and educated in Canada. And this is also why, I think these accusations of him being even a fascist come from. It's because it's very authoritarian in nature, this ideology. His family moving to South Africa, and his maternal grandfather, a big supporter even of apartheid.
Actually, I wanted to ask you something, just a thought process real quick. Would you agree that technocracy is probably what I would also call a neo-authoritarianism or totalitarianism, maybe?
Absolutely. It absolutely is a form of authoritarianism. Now, you might not mind authoritarianism if there's absolute abundance and you can have whatever you want, whenever you want it, as much as you want. But I'll tell you right now, as someone who has studied economics to some degree, that's a giant lie. Nobody can get what they want whenever they want for all the time, because there is always scarcity. There always will be. Even if we live in a near utopian society where robots produce everything and you don't have to go to work, somebody
abundance.
It's never that simple. And as authoritarians, I mean, they want compliance, they want uniformity. And here's an image from that era in the 1930s, 1940s. These are followers of Technocracy, Inc., and they wore gray uniforms and saluted one another and advocated for the eradication of the existing political system.
Gray is the color of conformity and the color of neutralness.
Yes, well,
if I'm correct.
Yeah, obedient little technocrat soldiers.
Comply, don't ask questions, don't have any overthinking or critical thinking, just do what I say.
And then Musk's grandfather also, even as he drifted away from the technocrat movement, became instrumental in the Social Credit Party in the U.S. in Saskatchewan, as he became, a big political figure. But
social credit, the Christian way.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's definitely that issue of Christianity rearing its head, religion coming into play. Even back then, of course, right, through this political movement and the social credit movement, and there's Musk's grandfather, maternal grandfather, in the newspaper. This was 1948. He led Saskatchewan Social Credit Party into a provincial election, but they lost to a party that most people, I think, in Canada would be familiar with, and more familiar with, the CCF, and Tommy Douglas defeated him at the time.
So if you look at it into the Canadian ways, you had Arif Khan and other, situations similar that was going on during COVID and after COVID, which kind of, I would agree that there's a form of, there's a link into it, or there's something into it that we got to look at.
Well, this is the symbol of Technocracy, Inc.
Mm-hmm.
Look familiar? Yin
yes,
yang?
I've seen it.
Yeah. So they've really
in my research yesterday, I've stumbled onto it, but I didn't went through it because lack of time. But yeah,
they kind of stole
and also cybercracy, something like that. So basically, cybercracy would be well, the propaganda or what we have now with social media and how you're being fed on one side or the other side. What I was basically calling infocracy not so long ago, and which would basically be the right terminology of cybercracy. So, yeah.
So this stuff has been fueling a lot of I would say even conspiracy theories, if you want to call them that. That may actually be more rooted in truth than conspiracy as it relates to Elon Musk. I'm going to run this little video here. I'm not even sure where this one goes because I didn't have really time to vet it, but I'm interested to find out what he's saying because this all goes back to Musk and Werner von Braun and Nazism and World War II and technocracy.
Werner von Braun, this gentleman here, we have him pictured in my favorite picture of him before he joined NASA. He was part of the Nazi SS and worked for Hitler. So
talking about von Braun, his ties to the Nazis and Project Mars.
Werner von Braun, chief architect of the Saturn V rocket that brought
von Braun giving us the Saturn V rocket. He says Operation Paperclip, Nazi Germany.
Then he worked for basically
I already see the dots here.
Trying to tell you what this guy's saying. And then
show the population, get them used to the idea of space travel and what to expect from a moon landing. And he also, the most interestingly, in 1953, he wrote this book right here, Project Mars, in which he described
von Braun and Project Mars book.
Mars colony, and in the chapter where he describes
in this book,
the leadership of the human Mars colony, he basically describes
technocracy describes technocracy with a leader.
Elon's not the name of the person that leads the colony; it's the title given to the person that leads the colony. However,
he talks about the person that leads the colony has the title, not the name, but the title of Elon in that book, Project Mars. Isn't that weird?
Oh my!
Joshua was arrested as the leader of the Technocracy Party.
Yeah, and then there's Haldeman, Joshua Haldeman, maternal grandfather. He's talking about Musk, his maternal grandfather, in 1940 being arrested.
No evidence that Werner von Braun was
in Canada by the RCMP.
Connected to it, besides the fact that he was obviously a fan of it, given he described it in Project Mars.
And von Braun not directly involved, but describes this in Project Mars.
Parsons is known for starting.
Anyway, it goes on. I mean, this is just too weird to not be true. And it is. It's actually all true. Like, this is all true. Isn't it weird?
So Braun would have inspired the grandfather of Elon Musk and so on. And so there you go.
So his maternal grandfather tied into technocracy, Werner von Braun writing about this, Project Mars, and then in that book, and then the leader of the people living on Mars has the title of Elon. And
I did heard that somewhere before.
So then Elon, right, is born. They choose the name Elon. He moves back to Canada. He's educated in Canada, ends up in the United States, and now who wants to go to Mars? Who's being given billions and maybe even trillions of American and even other country, including Canadian tax dollars, to pursue this dream of a utopian society and establishing a colony on Mars? Elon, who's
I remember where it comes back.
It's all these things interconnect, and so why do you think they chose the name Elon when Elon was born?
For the folks who wants to make a research just for the fun of it, of dive into it, go ahead on your whatever Google search, type Elon, title cyberpunk, and that's gonna be exactly what it did remind me. Oh my God, Rick, really? Now I'm just like, Eureka moment again.
Well,
We're into it.
I'm glad I'm giving you some eureka moments. So in October 7th, 1940, this is actually from Wikipedia. So I lifted this and just posted it up here. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrested members of Technocracy Incorporated, charging them with belonging to an illegal organization. Technocracy is illegal because it seeks to defund governance using the specific tactic of having governance take out loans, while diverted the loan money to the technocracy companies. So they're going into debt. The government goes into debt. They borrow a bunch of money, and then they give it to these big oligarchs or these big companies. This was 1940, okay? And they're giving the money to these technocrats or oligarchs like Musk, okay? And while so they're getting rich, well, the whole country, well, we go into debt. It says here in 1940, arrested were those who targeted both USA and Canada during World War II. Joshua Norman Haldeman, that's Musk's maternal grandfather, was arrested at location Regina, Canada, as the former director of Technocracy Incorporated that tried to attack the USA and Canada governance during World War II. He was forced into exile and fled to South Africa. That's why Musk has his roots in South Africa, because his maternal grandfather was running away. Norman Haldeman, that attacked USA and Canada, is the maternal grandfather of Elon Musk. Elon Musk from South Africa set the record for most governance payments collected, while the governance employees he made payments to took out $1 trillion loans that included record subsidy payments that his company received. The USA national debt went from $9 trillion for all years combined, 1776 to 2007, to $30 trillion during the period Musk collected payments from loans taken out by USA governance. Musk was also the largest political donor in USA governance during this time. Largest political donor in U.S. history. Musk was also, where am I here? Technocracy specific tactic is the contribution of gold and diamonds from mines to 300 United States governance employees that can take out loans. The gold and diamonds are given in exchange for subsidy payments from USA governance to their company. The specific tactic of technocracy taught by Musk's grandfather that he was arrested for in 1940 during World War II. That's from Wikipedia.
Could that ties into the destabilization of the economy, as some probably have stated in the past time?
Well, all this coming from a guy who's like, we're going too much into cut spending unless you're giving it to me. Of course, I don't think that Elon Musk was very aggressive about cutting government funding to his own companies like SpaceX. And, you know, it's also troubling because SpaceX is integral to the U.S. defense system and all of Western defense. Elon Musk and SpaceX and all those Starlink satellites, that's where the surveillance comes from, the military intelligence.
Well,
it's not just about
now it's not the defense anymore. It's the war now. But does I oh wow, can I ask you a real question real quick?
Yeah.
Can we have a little break, because I need to go to the corner real quick?
No problem. We will take a break and we'll come back on the other side of this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Okay, we're back, and here's Ian again. Yeah, there you are. Okay, so just to throw it over to you for a thought here. At this moment in the program, is any of this opening your eyes?
A lot, actually, and I think there's a lot of document that you have that I need to see and look carefully and make some dots here, because, yeah, lot of eureka moment tonight. Thank you, sir.
So, yeah, it's because when you've been talking about technocracy, I was like, you know, I get what you're saying, but I kind of felt like, even through your Substacks, like this information is not whole. It's like it's being kind of based on concerns just about technology and digital tracking, you know, digital ID, digital currencies, those concerns. That's what was driving, you know, your interest in the subject, and that's what was driving the writing that you've been doing. But there's much more behind all of this. It's an ideology, a philosophy that is really at the heart of everything we've been talking about here for a long time now, which is this reorganization, this reimagining of the world, of this, you know, this new world order that I think people are very confused about, honestly, where they're being spun this narrative, especially here in North America, that it's the World Economic Forum and it's, you know, it's the, you know, the World Health Organization. No, I mean, those are different elements of it, but the real new world order, it's what we're talking about here. Russia, China, the United States, the superpowers of the world, just getting together and carving everything up. Trump doesn't give a damn about Ukraine. Trump doesn't give a damn about, you know, much of anything other than just the United States, because he sees himself as sort of one of three big leaders in the world, and he's gonna have his third of the planet, and those other guys are going to have theirs. And this is also why I think he wants the Nobel Peace Prize, Ian, because you see, if you buy into this ideology, then you could potentially eliminate the possibility of a nuclear war. If all three major superpowers come into alliance together and they all agree that you're going to have this, you have that, we have this, and we're not going to fight. We're all going to be in alliance. We're just going to be one big, happy family of superpowers. And no more proliferation of weapons, because we'll just control everything, the three of us. But to get there, you're going to have a lot of countries between here and there who are going to try to preserve their sovereignty, preserve their national identity, preserve their culture, preserve their right to self-determination, preserve democracy and freedom. Because where we're going with all of this, with Trump, Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin, if all of this holds true, even not if all of it, but if a lot of this even holds true, and we continue this push toward this, and there's all kinds of empirical evidence that we're pointing to even here tonight to show that this is what's happening, it inevitably leads to World War freaking III. Yeah, because these countries, like you think France Do you think England, the UK, do you think all these countries are just going to roll over? No.
They won't.
No, not going to happen.
Their old country as heck. Their old country as heck. They want to keep their culture. They want to keep their legacy, so they won't roll over that easy.
Because not everybody will buy into this reimagining or this redistribution of power, this carving up of the world. But I've seen it even in the past year, more and more every month. People are beginning to clue in, if not, directly, even political pundits and, influencers and, very learned people. If they're not really dialed into what I've been talking about with Dugan and now technocracy and these hybrid ideologies, they are seeing where it's all going now. And they're beginning to recognize that, yes, these three guys, they seem to be leagued together. That's why when Putin went to Alaska to meet with Trump to talk about Ukraine, I said, those two guys are not just talking about Ukraine, and Trump isn't on Zelensky's side. These two guys, it's not so much that they're partners, it's that they're kind of like, they're in the know and they've agreed and they're just up there just making sure, like, okay, so you're gonna get Greenland, okay, and you can have Finland next and Poland. I'm not sure that it's working out, because I think that Trump has seen, even over this past week with this summit in Shanghai, this economic, and well, not just an economic summit, but all these other leaders coming together without him, and being, in this multi-polarity bromance going on over there. I think Trump was almost jealous, and so I don't know that Trump is going to hold through all of this, because Putin keeps disrespecting him.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, we will see.
But it's a bromance, like you said.
It could be all part of the whole big scheme.
WWF, right? Or WWE. We have a bloodshed together. We don't like each other's, but in the back of the show, we having a beer and laughing about the fist fight we just had.
Yes.
So yeah.
It's like, and see, if you even look at Ukraine through this lens, it even makes more sense, because the United States under Trump, it's kind of like, well, Ukraine, well, okay, I don't really care about Ukraine, but if I can make a few bucks and sell them arms, right? That's fine. And Putin, who wants to denazify Ukraine, is kind of okay with that, because that gives him then the justification or the excuse to then go in and engage in, the removal of all these evil Nazis while he takes over the country. So you can look at it through that lens, and that's how that would play out. So they don't mind. They both kind of want the war, because Putin wants an excuse to go in there and get rid of all the political problems that he would face or is facing as he asserts control over the country over time. I don't know. But it's all very shadowy. I was listening to was it Times Radio? No, it wasn't. It was Anthony Scaramucci, and he was talking. This was yesterday. I don't know how current the podcast was. Probably within the last few days, anyway. And I don't remember who he was talking to, but he references Trump and Putin's and his strange affinity for Putin. And while Anthony Scaramucci, who was briefly the press secretary for Trump, he talks about how he couldn't understand it. They could see that there was some sort of a connection, but even as he was part of the administration very briefly, like for days, and it continues to maintain ties with some of the people there, he couldn't understand it. And he said that he even spoke to Steve Bannon about why Trump has this affinity or why Putin seems to have this strange hold over him. And even Bannon doesn't really know. He doesn't really know. But you have all these allegations that the Russians maybe have something on him, or that he's a Russian agent or a Russian asset of some kind, or for some reason. And certainly there are these absolute definite ties between Trump and Russia. Whether there's collusion or whatever, that's another leap. But there's definite connections there. And Paul Manafort, even during the first campaign, instrumental in all of that. And he was definitely tied in with Ukraine and Russian oligarchs and the money and all of that. And that's why Manafort ended up under arrest and served time, mostly under house arrest. But yeah, he paid a dear price for that, and he hasn't come back. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes that most people, if you're aware of it, most people only maybe on the surface level, most people oblivious to really what's happening, because they're all just being spoon-fed this, these narratives on social media and even through MSM, and you're on one side or the other, and you're just getting this drip, drip, drip of information where you're getting this sort of spun narrative where you don't really understand why these things are happening.
Well, to me, it's looked like everything that you have warned us about, Rick, and everything that you were observing in the back kind of thing and trying to put in front of us, like, look, guys, this is what I'm seeing, and giving us editorialism after editorialism for 3 years, 4 years now after COVID and whatnot. I think this is where I put the name on it, and I think now I can tell you, coin it, bro. Take that Technocracy coin and spread the word.
Well, Technocracy, I think really even only just touched the surface of this, because it is a complex ideology. For instance, and we're just about to wrap up here because we want to get to the Maverick Midnight Matinee movie, which is connected to this. But
sure,
Technocracy is a philosophy. It is a political ideology. I think that it has heavily influenced Elon Musk, who is an engineer, who is a technocrat.
I would call that the system model. But
right?
Yeah.
So, there's all of that going on. But if you look at it, it's very complex, because it wants to do away with the price system of the way that we've, the way that I certainly look at economics, the way most people, I think, in Western society do. And they measure efficiency and value through the expenditure of energy, which is it's very interesting, because they talk about whether something is working well or not. They developed a whole system through the technocratic movement to measure efficiency through how much energy is expended, to determine whether it's operating efficiently or not, because they're scientists and engineers, not through like money or a price system or an exchange mechanism. So they're doing away with all of that. And is a government program working well? Well, they analyze all of that by how much energy is expended.
How much money also has been spent on the subject or project. Yeah.
And then to influence the way that people behave and the way they react to government programs, and whether government programs get people to respond in the ways that they want. They don't really use financial incentives per se. They would, through this technocratic system, issue credits, like energy credits.
It's a form of social credit.
And we've seen the adoption of ideas similar to that through like carbon tax credits, right? We've seen that, and even energy credits. And certainly, do you know one of the main ways that Tesla has made profits? It's not through the sale of their cars. It's through the sale of carbon tax credits, because the way the system works, especially in a country like Canada and the United States, is if you are an automotive manufacturer and you're making gasoline-powered vehicles, you need that you're allotted so many carbon credits by the government. And if you want to continue to produce cars, but you've used up all your carbon credits because each vehicle made is costs you a certain number of credits based on how fuel efficient the vehicle is. And if you and the more gas that a fuel that a gasoline powered vehicle consumes, the more carbon credits each production of each unit costs you as a company. And once you've used up all your carbon credits, you know how you keep on producing to make a profit and continue to put vehicles on the market? You can purchase them
reducing your carbon tax too.
No, right. No, you purchase additional credits from a company that still has them in store. So for a company like Tesla, which produces no gasoline powered vehicles, they're given the same carbon credits as companies like General Motors, Ford, Honda, Toyota. But those companies still produce internal combustion engines. So Tesla has all these carbon credits and they sell them to the other car companies because they don't produce any gasoline powered vehicles. And so they've been riding this wave of government handouts through carbon tax credits that they cash in by selling them to other car companies. And that's one of the things that has made Tesla the sort of the expansionary, semi-successful company that it is, not necessarily always profitable, but pulling all this money in because they ride the backs of these car companies that are still producing internal combustion engine powered vehicles that the public actually still wants to purchase. So it's not that they're not producing a product that that the public necessarily wants because it's not being market driven. This is a controlled market entirely at this point. And the advantage is given to a company that produces electric vehicles. And we've seen even in markets like China, where there was heavy duty price competition for, this is just all off the top of my head, right? So I hope I'm getting it all straight. But in China, Tesla was losing market share because companies like BYD and other Chinese subsidized electric vehicle manufacturers were able to produce vehicles way below the cost of what Musk was able to. So he was facing a price war. So he was able to chop down the price of his vehicles over there. And a lot of that is made possible because of the sale of carbon tax credits, even in the United States, where that makes the company more like viable in other places like China, where he's facing intense competition. Again, not because of market conditions, but artificial or government controlled, state controlled market conditions, because they're subsidizing the Chinese companies so that they can put the American company out of business. None of this is
corporate credit.
This is another reason why Trump 2.0 is entirely different for me, in my view, than Trump 1.0. Because in Trump 1.0,
totally different.
You got government cuts. You got government cutting red tape. You got government cutting programs. You got government cutting regulations. You got Trump striking new trade deals like the one with Canada and Mexico, a new version of the North American Free Trade Agreement, but it was mutually beneficial. I remember in Trump 1.0, the tool and die shops here near me were like just couldn't keep up with demand during Trump 1.0, especially in the first 2 years of the administration before the pandemic, because there was so much oil and gas activity, so much drilling going on the U.S. side, that they were calling up here to get components made for their oil rigs. And they were producing the stuff like crazy. The automotive industry humming along as well for those first couple of years. The U.S. economy expanding like crazy, because those were the things that really worked to expand the economy at the time. But what's going on now with these tariffs, this is different. This is a totally different approach. This is state control. This is ultimate control by one guy, Donald Trump. Because if you want your company to survive in the face of all these tariffs, you want an exemption, you want favorable treatment, there's one guy to go see. That's Donald Trump. That's why all those CEOs for those tech companies were sitting around breaking bread with Trump. It wasn't that Trump was capitulating to those guys who banned him off their social media platforms. It was the other way around last night. Those guys are bending the knee to Trump, at least for now. But they're in league together, and that is the technocracy that you're seeing sitting at that table. But there was, interestingly, one guy who wasn't there last night. Do you know who that was?
Elon Musk.
Yes. Trump says he was invited, but Musk wasn't able to attend. But those two guys, they're fighting. I don't know where all this leads, Dragon. Ian, I want to be real here, so I'm going to try to use your real name from now on, because I like all of this.
It's a stigmata now.
This is crazy land, but everything we've talked about here tonight, folks, is absolutely real. This is the real history. This is not conspiracy theory stuff. These are facts. You can look them all up. It's all out there. It's established. What does it all mean ultimately? I think this supports largely what we're seeing in front of our own eyes. We should believe what we're seeing. And I think that it supports what I've been trying to assert for a year and a half, anyway, that this is the New World Order. And it's not that we're going to get a genuine technocracy out of this, but there's certainly technocratic elements to this fusion or convergence of political ideologies, creating this hybrid, even as we've seen acknowledgement of all of this, even from David Icke tonight. So with that, sir, I'm going to throw it over to you for a final thought before we launch into our Maverick Midnight Matinee feature, which is a teleplay from a story adapted from one of the pioneers, the prophets of all of this, Isaac Asimov. Ian, over to you.
Well, I will say, guys, don't fear the evolution of politics that is technocracy today, because it's like a weapon. Anyone that can use a weapon in good or bad ill intention will probably do something out of ordinary. So, I mean, somebody could have good intention out of it and will use, like, for example, what happened with Zuckerberg earlier. I don't know what number you want to come up with, but if I can come up with the right number, I can just be positive and do right things, or be a total dictator, let's put it this way, and do bad things. So, well, just don't fear it. Just accept the way it is.
So with that, I have a question. I'm going to go to the chat for this. Tonight's feature on Maverick Midnight Matinee is this old television show from 1962. I think it's called Out of This World. I think almost every episode has been lost, but this one remains. It's called Little Lost Robots. So what I want to know is, do you want the original black and white version, or do you want the colorized version?
Well,
I'll tell you what.
I'll go with the color. I'll go with the color one.
Okay, so let's leave that with everybody in the chat. We'll run a little break, then we'll come back. We'll see how the vote goes, and then we'll launch into tonight's feature presentation on Maverick Midnight Matinee. Stay with us, and I'm going to look in the chat.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, we're back. So I think we're overwhelmingly getting votes in favor of color. One person I think said black and white. Colors.
Somebody's asking me what's on my face. My beard?
Okay. Well, okay. We'll go with color. I don't know. Do I have? It's a two-parter. So let me just see if the colorized version comes with both in color. I think it. So yeah, I think we're good. Okay. If not, we'll flip over and get you the second part in black and white. Okay. Are you ready? You're going to stick around for this, Dragon? Ian?
For sure.
Every time I say your nickname, you got to slap me back into reality, okay? Okay. All right, and I hope tonight's program on technocracy was of value to everybody. I only had sort of a very thin layer of understanding of this until over the last couple of weeks I started to read more about it because of Ian, who clued me in and said, you need to be looking at this. And so I'm glad that I did. And I'm really glad that you steered me in that direction. Now, folks, if you're going to watch the movie with us tonight here on Maverick Midnight Matinee, you can't do it on YouTube. I have to end the broadcast now over on our YouTube channels because YouTube don't like it when we run the movie on the YouTube channels because they say it's all copyrighted stuff, even when it isn't. So we get the copyright strikes. And do you know who I'm talking like?
Yeah.
Rosanna Dana from a Saturday Night Live, Gilda Radner. But I'm the male Gilda Radner tonight, and it's only Friday, and I don't know why I'm talking like this. It's got nothing to do with anything. Subliminal Gilda Radner. Okay. Oh, you know who she married?
No.
Gene Wilder. Do you know who Gene Wilder was? No, you don't know.
The names rings a bell, but I'm not sure.
I'm so old. Young Frankenstein. Very super talented, both of them. Anyway, those were the days. All right, folks, I'm ending the broadcast on YouTube. Go to Rumble, our Rumble channels, if you're watching on YouTube, to watch Maverick Midnight Matinee with us. I'm very sorry. We have a lot of people watching over on YouTube where our channel is coming back to life, and I appreciate all of that and the support that you're all giving us over there. Love that YouTube love. Thank you. And I'm so sorry, but I have to say goodbye, YouTube. All right, here we go.
Fly over.